The school bus cameras were supposed to keep kids safe. That's what the district brochure said, anyway. It bragged about state-of-the-art surveillance and zero tolerance for bullying, with glossy photos of smiling drivers and rows of clean yellow seats. Those pictures did not show a 9-year-old girl on her knees in the aisle, picking Cheerios out of the rubber mat with her bare hands, while a grown man watched. Her name was Nia. It was a Thursday afternoon in late fall. Houston heat had finally eased up, but the bus still smelled like old vinyl, spilled milk, and the kind of sweat that lives in foam seats. The engine rattled just enough to make her teeth buzz. 3 rows from the front, Nia knelt on the floor. The cereal had been poured in a long, crooked line, from the driver's seat back toward the middle. Tiny rings, some already crushed under shoes. She moved slowly, fingers shaking as she pinched them one by one. "Faster," the driver said. "We don't have all day." His name was Mr. Kyle Henderson. The kids called him Coach Kyle, even though he didn't coach anything officially. He was big, the way grown men get big when they stop caring what they look like. Thick neck, sunburned, patchy beard. He wore mirrored sunglasses even inside the bus, because he said the lights gave him headaches. Behind Nia, a cluster of 7th-grade boys watched from their seats. Someone's phone was out, recording. "Come on, mascot," one of them laughed. "You missed a spot." Nia didn't answer. Her braids slipped forward, hiding her face. Her backpack strap kept sliding down her shoulder. She didn't stop to fix it. Her knees already burned from the rubber ridges. She knew if she hesitated, if she cried, if she said even one word too loud, he'd make it worse. "Tell the bus why you're doing this," Coach Kyle said, voice smooth. "Go on." Nia swallowed. The cereal blurred in front of her. "Because I knocked it over," she whispered. "Try again," he said. The boys near the back started chanting low, "Say it, say it, say it." Her throat tightened. She knew the script. He'd made her say it before. "Because I'm clumsy," she said. "And kids who make messes have to clean them." "See?" he called out. "Actions, consequences. Y'all remember that." The camera near the front hummed quietly, little red light blinking. It caught everything, her small hands scraping over dirty floor, the way her shoulders hunched when someone flicked a Cheerio farther away with their shoe, Coach Kyle's relaxed posture as he leaned back and watched. What the camera did not catch was the way shame settles in the belly of a child and teaches them a story about who they are. That part never makes it to the footage. 4 miles away, at the edge of a tired strip mall, a different engine rumbled. Inside Grady's Tire and Auto, a man in a faded red work shirt leaned over a Harley with the kind of focus other people reserve for surgery. He'd rebuilt the carb himself, polished every chrome line, and he could tell you from the way the motor idled exactly how his day was going to go. Folks in the neighborhood knew him as Buddy. On his birth certificate, it said Darius Lamar Grady, 52 years old, widower, owner of the shop. On his cut, the leather vest hanging by the office door under a framed black and white photo of an old shovelhead. It said, Hell's Angels Houston. He wasn't wearing the vest right now. Right now he was just a grandfather with grease under his nails, waiting on the school bus. His phone buzzed on the tool cart. Buddy wiped his hands on a rag and glanced at the screen, expecting a parts supplier or a regular customer. Instead, it was a name he didn't recognize, and a message request. You don't know me, but I think this is your granddaughter on my son's friend's Snapchat. Underneath, a video thumbnail. Yellow bus interior. A small figure kneeling in the aisle. Buddy's chest went tight in a way that had nothing to do with age. He tapped the video. The sound hit him first. Tinny laughter, the low grumble of a bus engine, a child's voice so soft the phone struggled to catch it. He watched Nia on her knees, picking cereal from the floor. Watched the angle tilt as whoever filmed tried not to be seen. Watched the driver's hand rest casual on the wheel while he lectured kids about learning respect. It was only 37 seconds. By second 10, Buddy's jaw had locked. By second 20, his fingers had curled so hard around the phone his knuckles went white. By second 37, the only reason he hadn't thrown the phone across the shop was that he needed proof. He replayed it once, without sound this time. Just the picture. Just his granddaughter. The same granddaughter who refused to eat anything that dropped on the kitchen floor at home. The one who used to scream if her ice cream fell off the cone. Now she was on her knees, picking stray cereal out of bus grime like it was a chore. Something in him twisted. Not the loud, reckless rage of a young man. Buddy had already lived with that version of himself, and he'd buried enough friends to know where it led. This was different, like a cable pulled too tight through his ribs, the quiet, razor-sharp kind of anger that doesn't shout. It moves. He hit call. The number went straight to voicemail. A shaky young voice came on. "Hi, this is Keisha's mom. If you're calling about the bus video, I'm at work right now. You can text." He hung up, thumb hovering, thinking. There was one more person to call first. Before we go deeper, I want you to notice something important. In 37 seconds, we already saw 3 kinds of power at work. A grown man using discipline to humiliate a child. Older kids learning that cruelty is entertainment if an adult co-signs it. And a stranger. Someone's mom, probably exhausted on her lunch break, who decided she could not sit on that video and do nothing. If you've ever been that stranger, or that kid, or the person who wishes they had spoken up sooner, this story is for you. And if you're watching this on your phone, on your TV, anywhere in the world right now, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because stories like this, they're not just about one bus in one city. They're about all the places where cameras roll and nobody in charge is actually looking. Back to Buddy. He grabbed the shop phone from the wall, dialed a different number. This one didn't go to voicemail. "Grady's," a woman answered. "What you break now, old man?" "That your way of saying hello? Or you saving up kindness for your church ladies?" Buddy said. On the other end, Ruthie snorted. They'd been neighbors since middle school, siblings in everything but blood. These days, she ran the after-school program at Mount Zion Baptist and kept half the neighborhood kids fed with casseroles. "You calling to flirt or to ask for another favor?" she said. He didn't bother with small talk. "Ruth," he said, voice rougher than he meant it to be. "You seen what's going on with Bus 14? The silence on the line told him more than any words. "You got a video too," she said finally. Not a question. Buddy closed his eyes for half a second. The shop smelled like rubber and oil. Outside, traffic rolled by like nothing in the world was wrong. "I got 37 seconds of my granddaughter on her knees," he said, "and a grown man making her say she's clumsy." Ruthie exhaled slow. "Lord have mercy," she said under her breath. "Nia?" "Who else?" he said. He expected Ruthie to blow, to rant, to name names, to tell him every rumor she'd heard. Instead, when she spoke again, her voice was careful. Too careful. "Darius, this not the first video," she said. "It's just the first one with somebody's grandbaby we know." His hand tightened around the receiver. "What you mean, not the first?" "I got parents who've been complaining about that man for months," Ruthie said. "Kids walking to my program crying, saying they don't want to ride his bus. I helped one mama file a report. She never heard back. She keeps calling. They keep telling her they're looking into it." Buddy felt that cable in his chest pull tighter. "And you didn't tell me?" he asked, the words coming out flatter than he intended. "First time I heard his name, I did." Ruthie's tone sharpened a little. "You know what you said?" He searched his memory. Bus driver, schedules, temporary route. He'd waved it off, hadn't he? Something about, "They'll fire him if he's really bad." "You said," Ruthie continued gently, "the district don't play with that stuff no more. You said, they got cameras, they ain't stupid." So I believed you, and I thought, if they don't listen to me, maybe they listening to somebody. Now it wasn't just anger sitting in his chest. It was something heavier. The quiet realization that he'd trusted a system more than he'd trusted the kids who were scared. "You got those parents' numbers?" Buddy asked. "I got a folder," Ruthie said. "Names, dates, times kids came in crying. I started writing it all down when they kept telling me I was exaggerating." Of course she did. Ruthie always wrote things down. "You bring that folder to my shop tonight," he said. "And Ruth, don't send that video to nobody else yet, not till we know what we're doing." "You already know what you're doing," she said softly. "I can hear it in your voice." Buddy glanced at the leather vest hanging by the office door. Red and white patch. Winged skull. 3 words stitched in heavy thread that people thought they understood from headlines and TV movies. Hell's Angels. Houston. 9 years ago, after his daughter died and left him with a 3-month-old baby to raise, Buddy had walked into that clubhouse sure he was too broken for anybody to want him. They proved him wrong. He owed them more than Sunday rides and barbecue cookouts. "I'm calling church folks first," he said. "Then I'm calling my brothers." Ruthie didn't argue. "You need me to pray," she said, "or you got that covered." "You pray," he said. "I'm gonna move." He hung up, wiped his hands again, though the grease was on the inside now, not the outside. For a long breath, he just stood there, looking at the vest. He thought about the promise he'd made at his daughter's bedside in the hospital, when the machines were the only thing keeping her chest rising. "I'll keep her safe. I'll keep her baby safe. I won't sleep on nothing." He thought about how many times Nia had said she was fine when he asked about school. How often he'd let the answer stand because he was tired, or busy, or because she smiled when she said it. He took the vest down from the hook. The leather creaked in his hands like an old friend stretching awake. He slipped it on, feeling the familiar weight of it settle over his shoulders. It did not make him younger. It did not make him invincible. It did something else. It reminded him he wasn't alone. That evening, long after the last paying customer picked up their keys, the lights at Grady's Tire and Auto were still on. Not the harsh white fluorescence of work hours. Softer lamps in the office, the glow spilling across stacks of paperwork and coffee cups, and Ruthie's thick folder of notes. In the bay, 5 motorcycles lined up nose to nose, Trome catching the dim light. Their owners leaned against toolboxes and workbenches, arms folded, listening. Outside, more engines arrived one by one, rumbling into the alley behind the shop. Word traveled fast when you started it in the right places. Buddy stood near the office door, vest on. Video paused on his phone at the frame where Nia's hand hovered over a crushed Cheerio. He didn't feel like talking. He felt like riding that bus route himself and dragging the driver out onto the pavement. Instead, when the room quieted, he took a breath and chose different words. "I need y'all to see something," he said. He hit play. The bay filled with the sound of a cheap phone speaker, a bus engine, a child's forced confession. Some of the men looked away around the 15-second mark, not because they couldn't handle it, but because there's a kind of hurt you don't stare at if you want to stay standing. When the video ended, no one spoke for a long moment. Finally, a woman with close-cropped gray hair and hands scarred from years of welding broke the silence. "That your baby?" she asked. "My granddaughter," Buddy said. She nodded once. That was enough. Then it's our granddaughter, she said. We're going to pause here. In a moment, we're going to see what happens when a grandfather, a church lady with a folder, and a Hells Angels chapter decide that a school bus is not a private kingdom. But before we roll into the next part, if you're still with me and this has stirred something in you, that cable in your chest, that mix of anger and protectiveness, stay. Because the way they respond isn't just about revenge. It's about what it looks like when regular people refuse to let humiliation be just discipline. The folder didn't look like much. It was the kind you buy in a 3-pack from the dollar store. Faded blue, edges soft from being pulled in and out of a tote bag. On the front, written in black marker, Bus 14. Ruthie set it on Buddy's cluttered desk, like it was something fragile. In here, she said, tapping the cover, is every time a child told me they were scared to ride that bus. The office was crowded now. 4 more bikes had rolled in, jackets draped over chairs, vests thrown over the backs of stools. A pot of coffee someone had started in the corner had already gone lukewarm. The air smelled like oil, leather, and the faint sweetness of the lemon bars Ruthie insisted on bringing, even when nobody asked for snacks. Buddy pulled his reading glasses from his shirt pocket and sat down. Start from the top, he said. Ruthie opened the folder. Inside, handwritten notes, printed emails, copies of complaint forms from the district website. Each page was dated. Some had little stars or underlines. A few had kid-drawn stick figures in the margins, buses with sad faces, a man with big sunglasses. 3 months ago, she said, sliding the first page toward him. This mama came in. Her boy was 11. He told her the driver kept slamming on the brakes so kids would hit their heads on the seat. She thought he was exaggerating till he came home with a busted lip. Nurse sent a note home. She tapped the paper. But the box about accident was checked. Nobody said why he fell. Buddy read the next one. My daughter says the driver calls her slowpoke and makes her sit in the front so he can watch her. When she tried to move to sit with her friends, he stopped the bus and yelled until she cried. I called the transportation office. They said they would talk to him. He flipped to another. Driver made kids pick up trash in the aisle one by one while other kids watched and laughed. Said it's life skills, and I should be grateful. Another. My child came to the church program shaking. Said the driver told the kids if they told their parents, he would tell the principal they were disruptive and they might lose bus privileges. For a single mom, that's not a small threat. The notes went on. Patterns emerged. Same bus number, same driver, same phrases. Kids being forced to perform little humiliations in the name of respect. Parents calling, emailing, filing forms. And on almost every page, some version of the same outcome. We are looking into it. We'll remind him of district policy. Thank you for your concern. No changes. Buddy's jaw worked as he read. A muscle in his cheek kept jumping. How many families is this? Asked the gray-haired welder, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. 14, Ruthie said. That's just the ones who found me. Some don't have time to come talk. Some think nobody will believe them. Some think this is just how things are now. In the corner, a tall man with a shaved head and a patch that read Diaki, because he'd spent 20 years as a corrections officer before retiring into bikes and barbecue, cleared his throat. Looks like they believed him plenty, Doc said. The driver, I mean. They believed him enough to protect him from consequences. Transportation office have a supervisor? Buddy asked. Guy named Weatherby, Ruthie said. I met him once, smiled a lot, said all the right words, kept calling me ma'am, like he was doing me a favor by listening. You got any of your notes about him? Asked a woman in her 30s with braids tucked under a red bandana. Her patch read Pixel, club nickname she'd picked up back when she did social media for a big brand before she got tired of pretending everything was fine for a living. Ruthie flipped to the back and pulled out a printed email. He wrote me this after I sent him 3 separate complaints, she said. Wait, I'll read it. Her voice flattened as she recited. Ruth, we appreciate your dedication to our community. We are reviewing Mr. Henderson's performance as part of our routine evaluation process. Please reassure parents that student safety is our top priority. Pixel rolled her eyes so hard it was almost audible. Routine evaluation, she repeated. Meanwhile, kids are cleaning bus floors like punishment detail. Doc nodded toward the folder. That, he said, is your case file. Buddy looked up. Case file? Doc shrugged. You got pattern of behavior, multiple complainants, documented attempts to use proper channels. What you don't have yet is leverage. Buddy leaned back, mind already moving. He could feel the old instincts kicking in, not just the hot surge of protectiveness, but the cooler, more methodical part of himself that had helped him keep a business afloat for 20 years. Inventory, systems, pressure points. Ruth, he said, any chance those parents would be willing to talk on camera? She hesitated. They're tired, she said. They're scared. You know what happens when folks get labeled as problem parents. They're afraid their kid's gonna pay for it. Yeah, Buddy said. I know that fear. He stared at the video still on his phone again. Naya's hand. The cereal. The way her shoulders curled as if she was trying to disappear. Fear was one thing. Isolation was another. What if they don't have to stand alone? He asked quietly. Pixel's eyes sharpened. You thinking what I'm thinking? She asked. That depends, Buddy said. What you thinking? She pushed off the wall and came to stand by the desk. You got a folder full of ignored complaints, she said. You got a driver who thinks that bus is his kingdom. You got a transportation supervisor who's betting on people giving up because they don't have time to fight. She tapped the folder. And you got a club full of folks who know how to ride in formation, follow a route, and keep a schedule. Buddy's mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. We're not storming that man's bus, he said. Pixel snorted. Please, I like my record clean, she said. I'm talking about something else. 2 things, actually. She held up 2 fingers. Number 1, we map everything. Routes, schedules, where he stops, where the cameras are, who he talks to in the yard. Not to ambush, she added, catching the look on Doc's face, but to understand the system that's protecting him. Know the terrain, Doc said. Basic tactics. Can't fix what you don't understand. Exactly, Pixel said. Number 2, we control the story. Because right now, the only story the district is telling is everything is under control. We need people to see what under control actually looks like. Buddy thought of the sticker peeling at the back of Bus 14. Buckle up for safety, and the way Nia's knees had pressed into the floor. Meaning what? He asked. Pixel checked her watch. Meaning I call in a few favors, she said. I used to run campaigns for people who wanted to sell headphones and sneakers. This time we use those skills for something that matters, but we do it right. No doxing, no threats. No giving that driver anything he can twist into. I was scared for my safety. Peaceful, Doc said. Documented. Public. Visible, Ruthie added. Buddy looked around the room. He saw welders, former guards, warehouse workers, a nurse getting off a night shift, a mechanic with a bad back, a barista who rode a Sportster on weekends. Some in full colors, some in jeans and t-shirts, patches draped over chairs. He saw people the world might write off as trouble if they rolled up to a school in a pack. He also saw the same thing he'd seen 9 years ago when he walked into the clubhouse with his heart in pieces. A stubborn, relentless capacity to show up for each other. We ain't politicians, one of the older guys said. We're bikers. What exactly you expect us to do? Hold a bake sale in the parking lot? Buddy shook his head. I expect us to do what we always do, he said. Ride, protect, and make damn sure there's nowhere for the truth to hide. The plan came together in layers. First, routes. A young man named Miguel, who delivered packages during the day and rode with the chapter on weekends, pulled out his phone. "My little brother rides 14, he said. "I know where that bus hits. I've followed it in the car when school started, just to make sure it wasn't leaving kids on the corner." He brought up a map, tracing with his finger. Morning run, he comes off Jensen, hits the apartments, cuts through the old industrial park, swings by the church, then over to the school. Afternoon, same in reverse. Yard is over on Lyons. Cameras at the gate, but the street outside? That's public property. Doc leaned over his shoulder. "You thinking about a welcome committee?" he asked. "Thinking about a reminder," Buddy said. "That bus don't move through a vacuum. People see it. People care who's behind the wheel." Next, stories. Ruthie called 3 of the parents from her list while she was still at the shop. Her voice, gentle but firm, threaded through the office noise. "I know you tired," she told them. "I know you think nobody's listening. But something's different now. You're not just calling an office. You're speaking into a room full of people who will stand beside you with their faces showing. You don't have to say yes, but if you want this to change, you won't be alone." 2 said yes on the spot. 1 cried first, then said yes. 1 said, "Let me think. In that way, that means I want to, but I'm scared." Ruthie wrote their names on a yellow pad, underlining them. Pixel sent 2 quick texts to people whose names Buddy didn't recognize and got 3 dots typing back almost immediately. "You call news?" Buddy asked. "Not first," she said. "First, I call folks who know how to tell a story without turning it into carnage porn. Then I call a friend who does local education reporting and hates being lied to. If we give her documentation, she'll do more than a headline." "And the district?" Doc asked. "They gonna pretend they don't see a bunch of patched folks outside their yard?" Buddy shook his head. "We're not going to their yard," he said. "Not yet." "So where?" the welder asked. He thought of the brochure about bus camera safety. He'd seen it taped up in the front office of the school when he went to pick Nia up early for a dentist appointment. The district liked to brag about equipment, about programs, about safety. "Where do they hold school board meetings?" he asked. "Administration building off I-10, Miguel said. "First and third Tuesday. They do the thing where regular people get 3 minutes at the mic if they sign up ahead." "You ever been?" Buddy asked. Miguel shook his head. "My mama went once when they tried to close our elementary," he said. "They let her speak. Then they closed it anyway." Pixel folded her arms. "You thinking, what? We roll up to a school board meeting like a funeral procession?" she said. "Not like a funeral," Buddy said. He picked up the folder, weighing it in his hands. "Like a delivery. If you're paying attention, this is where the story shifts. Up to now, we've been in the private spaces, a bus aisle, a small church office, the back of a mechanic shop. From here on, we're in public. And if you've ever stood in a city hall meeting, or a principal's office, or a boardroom with fluorescent lights humming over your head while people in suits tell you they're working on it, you know how this feels. You also know how rare it is not to stand there alone. In the days before the meeting, the Hells Angels didn't idle. They rode the bus routes in 2s and 3s, not menacing, just present. Bikes behind the bus at a respectful distance, then peeling off at different streets. Nobody approached the driver. Nobody stepped on district property without permission. Kids noticed. Some just stared, eyes wide through the glass. Others smiled, pressed hands to windows, pointed. The driver noticed too. On the second day, he radioed the yard. "Got some bikers following me," he said. "Don't know if they're up to something." The dispatcher asked if they'd done anything threatening. "Well, no," he admitted. "They're just there." "Then drive your route," she said, already distracted by another call. "We're not the police." Inside the shop, Pixel was cutting together a short, clean video. No faces of kids, No license plates. Just hands holding complaint forms, blurred screenshots of emails, a slow, silent replay of the serial video, ending with a shot of empty bus seats and the words, "Student safety is our top priority. District transportation." Underneath, in smaller text, "Then why did it take a biker club to make you look?" She scheduled it, not for now, but for the night of the meeting. Ruthie helped the parents write out what they wanted to say in 3 minutes. They practiced in her church basement, standing behind a folding table they were pretending was the podium. "Breathe," she reminded them. "You're not asking for a favor. You're describing facts." Buddy sat in the back, listening. He didn't correct their grammar. He didn't tell them to calm down when their voices shook. He just took notes, dates, names, phrases that lined up with the folder. By the night before the meeting, his cable of anger had changed shape again. It wasn't a wire now, pulling him toward violence. It was more like a rope, something he could use to pull a whole crew in the same direction. The evening of the school board meeting, the sky over Houston glowed the color of old bruises, purple, fading into gray. Rain threatened, and then changed its mind. In front of the administration building, SUVs and sedans filled the parking lot. Teachers, parents, a few folks there to complain about budget cuts, or dress code, or overcrowded classrooms. They weren't expecting the sound. It started as a low vibration under the pavement. Then came the rumble, engines syncing up like thunder rolling in formation. Heads turned. Down the access road, in pairs and trios, motorcycles appeared. Not roaring in like a movie chase, just steady, disciplined. One after another. Lights on, riders upright. No wheelies, no revving for show. On their backs, patches caught the streetlights. Hell's Angels. Houston. Some people stiffened. A security guard at the door straightened his belt. One kid in a hoodie whispered, "Whoa," under his breath. The bikes didn't pull into the front entrance. They lined up along the street, every kickstand dropping in near unison. Riders dismounted, took off helmets, shook out hair. A few stayed with the bikes. The rest walked toward the building, not as a swarm, but as a group that knew how to move together without trampling anyone. In the middle of them walked 3 women and 1 man who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, holding a folder, a stack of printed emails, and the kind of courage you only find when the fear of doing nothing finally outweighs the fear of speaking. Buddy walked at their pace. He did not walk in front of them. He walked beside them. Inside, the boardroom was colder than it needed to be. Air conditioning, or maybe just the way big rooms like that always felt. A row of 7 board members sat behind a long, curved desk. Nameplates, microphones, water pitchers. The superintendent sat at one end, gray suit, practiced expression. The transportation supervisor, Weatherby, sat a few rows behind, trying to look like any other staff member. He recognized Buddy the moment he walked in. They'd met once at a back-to-school barbecue when the district wanted photos with community partners. Weatherby had shaken his hand, snapped a picture with the bikes in the background, and then forgotten his name the moment the camera turned away. He remembered now. Buddy saw the flicker of calculation in the man's eyes, saw the quick glance at the patches, at the parents beside him, at the security guard who shifted his weight uncertainly near the wall. The sign-up sheet for public comments sat on a table by the door, under a polite, laminated sign. Community voices, 3 minutes each. Ruthie picked up the pen. Her hand didn't shake. She wrote down 4 names. Then she turned to Buddy. "You ready?" she asked. He looked past her, at the rows of plastic chairs filling up. Teachers, staff, parents scrolling their phones, a few kids hunched over homework. He thought of Naya's knees on the bus floor, of all the other kids whose stories lived in that faded folder. He felt the weight of the vest on his shoulders. Not as armor, but as a reminder. Whatever happened in this room tonight, he was not one grandfather shouting alone at a microphone. He nodded once. "Yeah," he said. "We're ready. We're going to stop this part right here, at the doorway of that boardroom. Because what happens next is not about who can shout the loudest. It's about whether the people in those padded chairs are willing to look straight at what they've been reviewing for months and finally call it what it is. If you're still with me, and if you've ever sat in a room like this, waiting for people in suits to decide whether your child's pain counts as urgent, you already know how much this next part matters. At first, the Hells Angels were just a rumor at the back of the room. People whispered. Are they protesting? Is there a biker rally or something? What does this have to do with schools? Security shifted closer to the walls. One guard touched the radio on his hip, not using it yet, just needing to feel something solid under his hand. Up front, the board did what boards always do at the start of a meeting. They approved minutes. They recognized a student robotics team. They nodded through a presentation about test scores and continuous improvement. If you've ever sat through one of those, you know how the lull works. It's like white noise. It makes you forget why you came. Then the laminated sign came into play. Community Voices. 3 minutes each. The board president glanced at the list, cleared her throat, and said the first name. Ms. Carla Johnson. Carla Johnson was 5'3", 41 years old, and exhausted. She walked to the podium with the careful steps of someone who spends a lot of time calculating how much space she's allowed to take up. Her voice shook on the first sentence. Then it didn't. My son rides bus 14, she said. I'm here because for 3 months he's been coming home talking about being scared on that bus. Not of the kids, of the man driving. She held up a printed email. I have written 4 times to transportation, she said. I have called 3 times. I have been told they are looking into it. In those 3 months, my son has been forced to pick up trash off the floor while other kids laugh. He has been threatened with losing his bus privilege if he tells me what happened. The board president tried to keep her face neutral. A few people in the audience looked up from their phones for the first time. Carla's 3 minutes went fast. She did not cry. Not here. She saved that for the car later. When the red light blinked on the podium, she folded her notes and walked back to her seat. 2 bikers stood up briefly as she passed, not blocking her, just letting her know, visibly, that she was not walking alone. The next name. Mr. Ramon Diaz. Ramon was a quiet man with calloused hands. He cleared his throat once before speaking. My daughter is on bus 14, he said. She is 12. English is her second language. She told the driver she didn't understand why he was making her sit in the front alone. He called her slow in front of other kids. He shifted his weight. I work 2 jobs, he said. I cannot drive her to school. When he threatened to have her kicked off, she stopped telling me what happened because she knows I can't fix that. She started having stomach aches every morning. The doctor says it's anxiety. I say it's a grown man misusing power. His 3 minutes ended too. Another parent. Another story. Each one echoing pages from Ruthie's folder. Then the board president read the 4th name, and the room got very still. Mr. Darius Grady. Buddy walked to the microphone in a plain black shirt and his vest. You could feel the calculation in the room when he put his hands on either side of the podium. Some folks saw the patch and thought trouble. Some saw the gray in his beard and thought grandfather. Both were true. He looked up at the board, then at the crowd, then at the clock. 3 minutes, he said softly into the mic. All right. He didn't introduce himself as the owner of Grady's Tire and Auto, or as a tax-paying business, or as a community partner. He started with the only title that mattered to him right now. "I'm Nia's granddaddy," he said. "She's 9. She rides bus 14. He let that sit for a beat. "I ain't here to talk about rumors," he said. "I'm here to talk about what I saw with my own eyes, on my phone, recorded by somebody's scared child." He held up the phone. 37 seconds, he said. "That's how long the video is. 37 seconds of a driver making my granddaughter get on her knees in the aisle and pick cereal off the floor while boys laugh and he calls it a lesson." A murmur rippled through the room. The board president shifted in her chair. "Mr. Grady," she began. "We understand emotions are high, but we can't—" Buddy didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "With all due respect, ma'am," he said, "emotions ain't the problem here. The problem is what's on this video, and the bigger problem is that this room has had 14 chances to do something before it got to me." He turned the phone so the board could see the screen. Behind him, Pixel, seated with the other bikers, looked down at her own phone. Right on schedule, her edited video, careful, blurred where it needed to be, went live on 3 platforms at once. She didn't tag the district or the driver by name. She tagged one thing only. Bus 14. "Mr. Grady," one of the board members said, trying to regain control. "If you'll provide that evidence to our superintendent, we will certainly—" "It has been provided," Buddy said. "Not this video, but others. Complaints, emails, notes. People in this room used your website, your hotlines, your forms. They followed your rules, and you reviewed it." He nodded toward Ruthie, who sat with the folder in her lap like a shield. "You know this folder?" he asked. "It's a record. Its dates and times and the words, 'We are looking into it,' over and over again, while kids learned that if they spoke up, nothing would change." He drew in a breath. "Now I want you to know something else," he said. "I ride with the Hells Angels, Houston chapter. Some of y'all just got real nervous. I can see it." A few uncomfortable chuckles, a couple of outright frowns. "Let me ease your mind," he said. "We're not here to threaten nobody. We're not here to block buses or scare children. We're here because our kids ride those buses. Our grandkids. Our neighbors' kids. We're here because when we see a man humiliating children under color of authority, we don't call that discipline. We call that abuse." He let the word hang in the air. Abuse. "That bus driver been counting on one thing," Buddy said quietly. "He's been counting on the kids being scared, and the grown folks being too tired to keep pushing after your office told them, 'We're handling it.'" He leaned in a little. "He'd been counting on people giving up," he said. "I'm here to tell you we're not giving up." The red light on the podium started blinking. Time. Buddy saw it, smiled slightly. "I know my 3 minutes are up," he said, "so I'll just end with this." He looked each board member in the eye. "This video is not just on my phone anymore," he said. "It's on a whole lot of other screens right now. Parents are watching. Teachers are watching. Your own bus drivers who do their job right, who are sick of being painted with the same brush, they're watching too." He straightened. "So you can handle this in here," he said, "or you can wait till you're answering questions on the 6 o'clock news. Either way, the days of 'we're looking into it' are over." He stepped away. No mic drop, just a man walking back to his seat. Behind him, phones buzzed in pockets as hashtag Bus 14 began to trend in a way the district's social media manager was absolutely not prepared for. If you've ever spoken truth into a microphone, you know that moment afterward, the one where nothing looks different yet. The board still sits in a row. The superintendent still shuffles papers. The clock still ticks. You walk back to your seat thinking, "Did that do anything? Did I just put a target on my back for nothing?" That's where Buddy was when his phone buzzed. It was a text from Miguel, who'd stayed outside with a couple of riders and a portable speaker. "It's spreading. Reporter from Channel 7 just pulled up. Asked who's in charge." Buddy didn't answer yet, because the next voice at the mic wasn't his. It belonged to someone the board hadn't expected to see on that side of the room. Next, we have... The president hesitated, reading the name twice. Ms. Diana Brooks? A middle-aged woman in a navy cardigan stood. She moved like someone walking against wind. On her ID badge, clipped to a lanyard, it said, Diana Brooks Transportation. Route Manager. Weatherby sat up a little straighter. Diana went to the podium, hands trembling so visibly she had to grip the sides to steady them. My name is Diana Brooks, she said. I've worked for this district's transportation department for 17 years. She glanced over her shoulder just once. Her eyes landed on the line of bikers in the back, on Ruthie, on the parents. She turned back to the mic. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, she said. I came to watch because I knew this was coming, and I told myself I would sit quiet because I like my job and I like my health insurance. A few people laughed weakly. She didn't. But then I saw that little girl on the video, she said, voice tightening. And I realized I've been part of the problem. Weatherby shifted in his seat like someone whose chair just got uncomfortable. Diana continued. Mr. Henderson has been written up 3 times this year, she said. Not for accidents, for complaints about his conduct with children. She caught herself. I have forwarded those complaints up the chain. She swallowed. I have been told to coach him, to remind him of policy, to support our drivers so they don't feel second-guessed by parents. I have been explicitly told to avoid making notes that could be discoverable if there was ever an investigation. The room changed temperature. It wasn't the air conditioning. It was the feeling when a crack appears in the wall and sunlight gets in. In other words, she said, looking directly at the board now, we knew. Not everything. Not this video. But enough. Enough to know there was a pattern, and that if we didn't act, something worse was going to happen. Something like, what's on that screen? She pointed to the monitors on the side walls where the board sometimes showed slides. They were blank now. Pixel's fingers hovered over her phone. She sent a quick message to the education reporter waiting outside. Get them to request the footage from tonight's live stream. Use it. Diana took a breath. I'm speaking because those parents followed your process, she said. And because the only reason this is being treated like an emergency tonight is because a biker club showed up and the internet is watching. That's not how student safety should work. Her 3 minutes flashed red. She finished anyway. I don't know what's going to happen to my job after this, she said. But I know this. If you send those kids back onto that same bus with that same driver tomorrow, every one of you will be responsible for every moment of fear they feel. She stepped away from the mic, hands shaking harder now. As she walked back, one of the riders in the back, Doc, the ex-corrections officer, stood up without thinking. Not to applaud, not to shout. He just stood, hand over his heart, like you do when someone pulls a flag up a pole. Then another rider stood. Then another. It wasn't a planned gesture. It just happened. People notice that kind of thing. We're going to pause here again, right on the edge of decisions, because the easy version of this story would jump straight to driver fired, everybody hugs. But real life, especially for folks who have dealt with systems their whole lives, doesn't move that fast or that clean. In the next part, we're going to see what actually changes. What happens to Coach Kyle? What happens to the people who kept stamping, "We're looking into it"? And more importantly, what happens to Nia and that bus route once the engines quiet down and the cameras turn away? If you're still with me, and you want to see not just the punishment but the rebuilding, the part older folks watching this on TV or their phones know is the real work. The board recessed. That's what they called it anyway. To Buddy, it looked a lot like 7 adults getting up from a table and walking into a back room to decide how little they could do without getting burned. People milled around the boardroom. Teachers whispered in clusters. Parents checked their phones. A few glanced over at the back row where the bikers sat, as if they'd just realized the patches weren't going to start anything. They were just there. On half a dozen screens, Hatfield Bus 14 kept ticking upward. Outside, on the sidewalk, the education reporter Pixel had tipped off was doing a quiet stand-up, camera crew keeping their equipment low-key. Inside, Buddy turned to Ruthie. "You all right?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I'm where I need to be." She squeezed the folder. "I should have made more noise sooner," she added, voice low. "I should have." "Don't do that," Buddy said gently. "You did what you knew how to do. You wrote it down. You kept the receipts. You tried their way, now we're trying ours." She exhaled, some of the guilt leaving her shoulders. "You think they're really going to do something?" she asked. He looked toward the closed door. "I think they're going to do something," he said. "The question is whether it's enough." When the board came back, their faces had that careful look people get when a camera might be pointed at them. You could tell which ones had kids or grandkids, and which ones mostly cared about budgets. But in this moment, they all came back understanding one thing. This was bigger than a difficult employee. The president cleared her throat, papers rustling. "Thank you all for your patience," she said. "We've heard some troubling and heartfelt testimony tonight. Student safety is, and has always been, our highest priority." Pixel, in the back, muttered under her breath, "There it is," and thumb-typed the phrase into a notes app, not because she believed it, but because she knew how often that sentence got repeated in stories like this. "We are taking immediate action," the president continued. "Effective tomorrow morning, Mr. Henderson will be placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation." You could feel a subtle shift in the room. Relief, yes, but also that familiar feeling a lot of people know too well. Why did it take this much? "Furthermore," she went on, "we are initiating an independent review of our transportation department's handling of complaints. We will be appointing an outside investigator to ensure impartiality." Buddy watched Weatherby out of the corner of his eye. The man's jaw clenched once. "During this process," the president said, "we ask for the community's patience as we gather facts. We are committed to transparency, but we also must respect personnel privacy." There were the parameters, the legal lines. "The families who spoke tonight," she added, glancing at the front row, "will be contacted individually. We thank you for bringing your concerns to us." She looked at the clock. "And with that, we will proceed with the remainder of our agenda," she said. She might as well have said, "We have met our crisis quota for the evening." But something had shifted, whether they wanted it to or not. Once you've said the words independent review into a microphone, you can't unsay them. Outside, when the meeting finally adjourned, the air felt different. No victory music, no confetti, just the low murmur of people filing out into a humid Houston night where the streetlights buzzed and the rumble of bikes waited like distant thunder. The reporter made a beeline for the parents first. Camera up, mic out. "How do you feel about the district's response?" she asked. Carla spoke for them. "Relieved," she said, "and tired, and angry it took this much." "What made you decide to come forward tonight?" the reporter asked. Carla glanced over her shoulder. At the line of vests, at Ruthie's folder, at Buddy, who stood a few steps back, letting them have the mic. "I didn't come by myself," she said simply. The reporter turned to Buddy next. "Sir, are you the leader of this group?" she asked. Buddy shook his head. "We don't do leader like that," he said. "We do responsibility." "But you did organize this," she pressed gently. He considered the word. Organize. "My grandbaby got humiliated on camera," he said. "Other people's kids got dismissed on paper. We put those two truths in the same room and invited the district to tell us what they're going to do about it. That's all." Why bring the club? She asked. Why Hell's Angels? He looked down the row of bikes. Because children who've been made to feel small, he said, deserve to see that they are worth showing up for in big ways. He could have said more. He didn't. He'd learned a long time ago that one clear sentence could do more than a 5-minute rant. The next morning, Bus 14 pulled into the yard without Coach Kyle at the wheel. He was at home, pacing his kitchen, reading a politely worded email that said he was on leave with pay pending investigation. His phone pinged with texts from parents who'd always thought he was firm but fair, and from others who suddenly remembered incidents they'd brushed off. On a different screen, the video of Nia on her knees had been watched over 500,000 times. He did what people in his position usually do first. He blamed the kids. Kids these days are so soft, he told himself. Can't handle discipline. Somebody records 30 seconds of something they don't like, and suddenly, I'm a monster. He blamed the parents. Don't know how to raise their kids? He muttered. Expect the bus to fix what they won't fix at home. Eventually, when his hands stopped shaking, he called a union rep and a lawyer. They told him what he wanted to hear, for now. We'll fight this, they said. They can't just throw you under the bus. He almost laughed at the phrase, even then. Back at the yard, a substitute driver slid behind the wheel of 14. He was nervous. You could tell by the way he adjusted the mirrors twice. Transportation had sent out a bland robocall. We want to assure you that all routes will operate as scheduled and that student safety is our highest priority. No mention of why the change. Parents knew anyway. Kids knew. When Bus 14 pulled up to Nia's stop, she hesitated at the curb. Her backpack felt heavier than usual. Buddy stood behind her, a step back. You don't have to ride today if you don't want to, he said quietly. We can figure something else out. She looked up at him. Her eyes weren't the same as they'd been in that 37-second clip. There was still fear there, but there was something else too. Something he hadn't seen in weeks. Curiosity. Who's driving? She asked. He pointed. Not him, he said. New guy. And he's on his best behavior. She studied the bus. Behind it, parked a legal distance away on the side street, 2 bikes idled. Not loud. Just present. You gonna follow? She asked. For a while, he said. Not forever. Just till you don't need us to. She nodded slowly. Okay, she said. She climbed the steps, holding the rail. The new driver greeted her with a tight smile. Good morning, he said. She didn't answer out loud, but she did something she hadn't done in a long time. She chose her own seat. Not front, not cowering in the back. Middle, next to the window. She sat down, knees bent, backpack on her lap, and watched as the 2 bikes fell into line behind the bus like guardian shadows. The investigation took weeks. Paperwork, interviews, meetings with lawyers. It reached farther than anyone expected. They pulled camera footage from other days, other routes. They found moments that had never gone viral but should have set off alarms. They discovered emails where concerns had been minimized, where phrases like, "We don't want to create a culture of fear among our staff," had been used to justify ignoring patterns. They found that Weatherby, the supervisor, had quietly discouraged written documentation of complaints, just like Diana said. The outside investigator wrote it all up in a report, thick enough to stop a door. The board had no choice. Coach Kyle's leave with pay turned into termination. Weatherby resigned to pursue other opportunities 2 days before the report went public, which is how you say we told him to leave before we had to fire him in administrative language. Diana was offered a different position, not as punishment, as protection. You staying? Ruthie asked her one afternoon over coffee. Diana stared into the cup. I don't know yet, she said. I believe in buses. I believe in getting kids to school safe. I don't know if I believe in the people who've been running this department. Ruthie nodded. Fair, she said. But I know this, Diana added. If I leave, I'm going to say exactly why, in writing. No more whisper networks. Good, Ruthie said. Write it down. That's how we got here. Meanwhile, something else was happening that didn't make the news. It started small. A teacher at Nia's school, Ms. Patel, heard about the bus situation and realized she had kids in her class who always came in jittery, stomachs hurting. She started doing a 2-minute settle-in check at the beginning of homeroom. You good? She'd ask each kid quietly as they came in. Anything I should know? Sometimes they shrugged. Sometimes they said, fine. Sometimes, now that they'd seen grown-ups actually do something, they said, my driver yelled at me for something I didn't do. She wrote it down. In another part of town, a middle school counselor read about Hat Bus 14 and decided to run a lunchtime group called Ride Talk once a week. Anything happen on the way to or from school that's sticking in your head? She'd ask. Stuff came out. Not all of it abusive. Some of it just normal kid cruelty. But now it had somewhere to go besides the inside of a kid's chest. The district, pressed in public, announced a new program with a name that sounded like it came out of a marketing meeting. Safe Rides Initiative. They touted more training for drivers, better complaint tracking, random ride-alongs. Pixel rolled her eyes at the name, but admitted, privately, that the details weren't bad. They're doing this to save face, she told Buddy one night at the diner. But if kids end up safer, I don't care who gets to spin it. Buddy nodded. Pretty words don't change anything by themselves, he said. But they make it harder to go back to how it was. That's worth something. And the club? They did what they always did after a fight. They went back to work. People still had jobs. Bikes still needed maintenance. Rent still had to be paid. There were no patches handed out for Saved the Bus. No special ceremony. But there were little changes. The chapter started a quiet list, names of kids whose families might need backup at parent-teacher meetings, or school conferences, or when a complaint got ignored. They didn't roll up 20 deep to every appointment. That would have been overkill. Sometimes all it took was one extra adult in a vest, sitting politely in the corner, taking notes. Schools notice when someone who looks like trouble is actually there to listen. One Saturday, in the church basement, Ruthie, Pixel, and Doc hosted a workshop. The flyer said, How to be Heard, a workshop for parents who are tired of "we're looking into it." They went over how to document incidents, how to phrase complaints so they couldn't be brushed off, how to ask for things in writing, how to bring a witness. Ruthie opened with a prayer. Pixel followed with a PowerPoint. Doc ended with a story about the difference between discipline and humiliation. Nobody left with all the answers. They did leave with phone numbers. And Nia? She didn't become a mascot, no matter how tempting it would have been for adults to turn her into a symbol. She was still a 9-year-old girl who liked drawing unicorns with motorcycle helmets and who hated mushy peas. The video faded from headlines like all videos do. But some things stuck. A month after the investigation report came out, Buddy picked her up from school. Not because something was wrong, but because the shop was slow and he wanted to take her for ice cream. They sat at a metal table outside the corner store, watching cars go by. You still thinking about the bus sometimes? He asked. She shrugged. Less, she said. I like the new driver. He lets us pick music on Fridays if we're not loud. He says, you okay when we get on? But not in a creepy way, in a real way. That's good, Buddy said. She stirred her ice cream. Granddad? Yeah. Why did all those people come that night? She asked. At the meeting. With you. He could have said, because I asked. He could have said, because they're my club. He looked at her serious little face, the way she was trying to line up the world in her head. They came, he said slowly, Because some of us know what it feels like when nobody shows up, and we decided we ain't letting that be your story. She considered that. Will you do that for other kids? She asked. If we know about it, he said. If people tell us, if they want us there, we can't fix everything, but we can show up. She nodded, absorbing it. Then she did something that surprised him. Can I show up too? She asked. He blinked. For who? She pointed with her spoon across the street. A smaller boy, maybe 7, stood by the crosswalk, backpack hanging loose, looking at a group of bigger kids laughing on the curb. He just started riding my bus last week, she said. He sits by himself. He looks like I used to feel. The words came out slow, like she was trying them on. Buddy's throat tightened. What are you thinking? He asked. She looked up at him, eyes steady. I'm thinking, she said. I could tell him where the quiet seat is that doesn't squeak and doesn't get bumped when people get on. And I could tell him if anything bad happens, I know a granddad who knows some people. Buddy couldn't help it. He laughed, one short, wet sound that was half joy, half something else. You sound like your mama, he said. I don't remember her, Nia said softly. I know, he said, but she's in you anyway. They finished their ice cream. On the way back to the truck, Nia tugged his hand. You wear your vest when you pick me up Monday? She asked. He raised an eyebrow. Why? So the new kid sees it, she said simply. So he knows people are watching. He nodded. Yeah, he said. I can do that. We're almost at the end of this story. We've seen the humiliation, the anger, the big public moment, the official consequences. What's left is the quiet part, the part where life goes on, differently. In the final part, I want to show you one more ride, one more meeting, and one last choice Nia makes that matters more than any headline. If this has stayed with you, if you've been thinking about your own bus, your own cafeteria, your own boardroom while we've been riding with these folks. The ride wasn't loud. That surprised people. When most folks picture a Hell's Angels ride, they imagine roaring engines, smoke, chaos, movie scenes, headlines. But the Sunday afternoon buddy took Nia out with the club on a family ride. The sound was steady, almost like breathing. Engines up, engines down. Gear change, gear settle. A line of bikes sliding through the neighborhood, not like an invading army, but like a moving reminder. We're here. We see you. Nia sat on the back of Buddy's Harley in a tiny leather vest Ruthie's cousin had stitched for her. No big patch, just a small embroidered wing on the back and her name on the front. The club didn't put colors on kids. That wasn't the point. But they did let them feel the wind. Buddy kept it slow, residential streets, wide turns, no highways. They rode past her school once, past the bus yard once, past the little corner store where she and her new friend sometimes bought popsicles. He watching? Nia shouted over the rumble, tapping his shoulder and pointing at the sidewalk. Buddy glanced. The new kid from the bus, backpack on, laces half-tied, stood there by the fence, eyes wide as saucers. He raised a cautious hand. Nia waved back hard. Buddy's chest did that tight, loose thing again, the one that meant something was healing and it hurt a little on its way out. He lifted 2 fingers off the handlebar in a small salute as they passed. For the first time, the boy smiled. Later, when the bikes were lined up outside Devil's Highway Diner, and grown-ups were arguing about the best way to season ribs, Nia sat in a booth with a coloring book. Across from her, Pixel was sketching out an idea on a napkin. What's that? Nia asked, leaning over. Pixel turned the napkin around. On it, in quick, messy lines, was a bus. Not a perfect rectangle, just a suggestion of one. Next to it, a tiny figure with a backpack. Above both, a little wing symbol. Underneath, she'd written, Guardian Seat. What's a guardian seat? Nia asked. Pixel chewed her pen cap. I was thinking, she said, we got all these programs grown-ups run now. Trainings, meetings, forms. That's good. But kids need something they can see. Something they can choose. She pointed at the little figure. What if every bus had one seat that meant, if you sit here, people are paying attention, she said. Not just to discipline, but to whether you're okay. It doesn't give you a license to act wild. It just means the grown-ups riding that bus, and the ones watching the cameras later, have agreed. Whoever's in this seat gets seen. Naya studied it. So like, if you feel weird or scared, you can sit there, she said. Yeah, Pixel said. And drivers who don't like being watched probably won't want that seat on their bus. Naya frowned thoughtfully. It shouldn't be just one seat, she said. Sometimes the person who needs help doesn't want to be where everyone can stare. Pixel smiled. True, she said. What would you call it then? Naya thought. The safe row, she said. 2 seats, by the window, but not all the way in the back. Pixel wrote it down. Safe row, she repeated. Kid-approved terminology. You mind if I steal that? Naya shrugged in that way kids do when they've just tossed a pebble into a pond and have no idea how far the ripples will go. A month later, in a different school across town, a counselor printed out little wing symbols and laminated them. She didn't know Nia. She'd never met Buddy. She just saw the hatched Bus 14 story, saw an interview where a biker's granddaughter talked about a safe row, and thought, we can do that here. She ran it past her principal. He hesitated, then said yes when the transportation department, newly jumpy about optics, approved it quickly. Looks good for the report, someone said in a meeting. Student-led safety initiatives. They missed the point. The point wasn't how it looked on paper. The point was that on Bus 9, for the first time, a quiet 5th grader named Jamal slid into a seat with a wing sticker on the window and felt a little less like he had to carry his fear alone. Back in Buddy's neighborhood, life went on. People still forgot permission slips. Tires still went flat. Homework still got lost between the couch cushions. The club still had its rough edges. They argued. They messed up. They apologized badly, and then learned to do it better. This wasn't a fairy tale. But some things were different now, in ways you don't always notice until you look back. At Mount Zion's after-school program, Ruthie added a new question to the snack line. Bus or walk? She'd ask each kid. If they said bus, she'd follow up. How's your ride? Sometimes they'd shrug. Sometimes they'd say, good. Sometimes they'd say, the driver yells a lot. She didn't let that float away. What kind of yell? She'd ask. The kind that keeps you safe, or the kind that makes you feel small? It took them a while, but the kids learned the difference. And once you know the difference, it's harder to accept the second kind as just how it is. Ruthie collected those little stories, same as she'd collected the big ones. Dates, times, routes. The folder on her desk got a new label. Not Bus 14, just rides, because it was bigger than one bus now. Every so often, someone would bring up the Hells Angels at a PTA meeting or a church potluck. Wasn't it dangerous having them involved? I heard some of them have records. I don't want my kids thinking bikers are heroes now. Buddy didn't argue when those comments reached him. He knew who he'd buried, who'd been locked up, who'd earned second chances, and who hadn't. He also knew this. On the night a bus driver's private kingdom finally got daylight shined into it, it wasn't a slogan or a brochure that walked parents into that boardroom. It was boots, and wheels, and people who'd already made peace with being the kind of folks others cross the street to avoid. Sometimes it takes the people the world is scared of to scare the right people. Not with fists, with presence. One evening, not long before school let out for summer, Buddy found himself at a different kind of meeting. The district had invited community stakeholders to a round table about student safety. He almost didn't go. He'd been in enough fluorescent-lit rooms to last him a lifetime. But Ruthie gave him that look that said, if we're not in the room, they'll say we didn't care. So he went. The room had the usual spread: cheap cookies, warm water bottles, a PowerPoint with bullet points about collaboration. There were pastors, PTA officers, a youth soccer coach, a cop, a couple of non-profit folks. And, sitting in his vest in a metal chair that squeaked every time he shifted, one Hell's Angel. The assistant superintendent leading the meeting kept her language careful. We want to thank all our partners, she said. Faith communities, law enforcement, parent organizations, and motorcycle clubs for their engagement. She glanced at Buddy. He nodded once. She started talking about policy changes, training modules, updated complaint forms. It was fine, necessary even. But when she paused for questions, Buddy cleared his throat. Can I say something? He asked. She smiled, a little tight. Of course, Mr. Grady, she said. He didn't stand. He just leaned forward, forearms on the table, hands laced. You can fix every form in the world, he said, and there's still one thing you can't legislate. The room quieted. What's that? She asked. Whether grown folks believe kids the first time they say they're scared, he said. He let it sit. You want safer buses? He continued. Train your people, sure. Check your cameras, sure. But also teach every adult in this system, from the front office to the bus yard, that when a child says that something's wrong, your first job is not to defend the system. It's to listen. He shrugged. That's all I got, he said. It wasn't, and they all knew it. But sometimes one sentence is enough to haunt a meeting long after the PowerPoint slides are gone. And you? You've been riding along this whole time. Maybe you've never set foot on a school bus since you were a kid. Maybe you still send a little one out to the curb every morning and watch until the doors close behind them. Maybe your bus wasn't yellow. Maybe it was a cafeteria, a locker room, a church, a job. Some place where someone with more power than you decided humiliation was a teaching tool, and everyone else decided to look away. Here's the part of the story that isn't about Nia, or Buddy, or the Hell's Angels. It's about you. Somewhere in your life, right now, there is a smaller version of that bus. You might not see it yet. It could be a neighbor's kid who started cutting across the field to avoid a certain corner. A coworker who laughs a little too loud when their boss makes a joke. A relative who changed their whole route home and says, "It's just quicker," but can't look you in the eye when they say it. You don't need a vest or a Harley to show up there. You need 3 things. Eyes open. Notice who looks smaller when a certain person walks into the room. A record. Write it down. Dates, times, words. Memory is a slippery thing. Paper is not. A willingness to stand beside, not in front of, the person who's scared. Walk with them into the office. Sit with them at the meeting. Be the extra set of eyes at the back of the bus, even if your bus is a Zoom call. The Hell's Angels in this story did something big and visible. Most of the work that mattered came after the engines cooled. A grandfather listening differently. A church lady with a blue folder. A route manager who decided her job was worth less than her integrity. A girl who spotted a scared kid at the crosswalk and chose to wave first. Those are guardian acts. They don't trend. They stack. Years from now, Nia won't remember every detail of the board meeting. She won't remember the exact wording of the policy changes or the names of every adult who spoke. What she will remember is this. There was a day when she was small and on the floor, and no one in charge stopped it. And there was a day when she walked into a building full of adults in suits with her head up, because behind her came a group of people the world said were dangerous. And they used all that weight, all that noise, all that reputation not to hurt anybody, but to make room for her voice. That's the part you get to keep. That's the part you get to copy in your own way. You don't have to be a biker to be a guardian. You just have to decide that when you see someone on the floor, your first instinct isn't to ask what they did wrong. It's to ask, who put you there? And then refuse to look away.